Okay, hello everyone, welcome to tonight's episode. I'm going to dive into it. The title is Inner Realm World Extraction. And so I want to go through a sort of a series of notes I've made here. And I'm going to share to the best of my ability how I feel that man can extract, how inner realm world extraction occurs. What that means is there's life in front of your eyes, there's phenomenology occurring in front of your eyes, and there's phenomenology occurring behind your eyes. The phenomenology occurring behind your eyes is your subjective experience. The phenomenology occurring in front of your eyes is your objective existence. Now keep that in mind. In these talks, throughout the years that I've been giving them, there has dawned upon me a vision. And I have kind of considered that the human beings, the only game we have that's worth playing on this earth is to see what an advanced civilization looks like before we, in some sense, return to the void. And so in order to have an advanced civilization, we require to have advanced communicators. And an advanced communicator means that we require an advanced awareness to communication. That means at some point it will happen. Whether it happens now or whether it will happen, hundreds of years in the future, at some point somebody's going to be like, are we still doing the same thing? So the ideology that I'm kind of working with here is that in order to build an advanced civilization, we require advanced communicators. In order to become advanced communicators, we require an advanced awareness to communication. In order to have an advanced awareness to communication, we got to look at what communication is simply. Its implication, its meaning, its position in reality's conscious activity. Now, communication, I've written here, is a bridge between the inner realms. So one thing that, before I really dive into how one can extract worlds from the inner realms and what in some sense an intuitive authorization is. I want you to see that in front of your eyes, again, as I was pointing out, it's an objective experience. So what does that mean? That means every human being you see on this earth, in front of their eyes, the phenomenon appears as an object. Okay. So, in some sense, the outer realm is like a video game where we are all characters in, but none of the characters in the video game can see who's sitting behind the screen of this multiplayer. Imagine physical reality was a multiplayer online game, and the nature of our minds, which is unknown. In other words, the conscious viewer is behind the screen. Behind the computer screen, and when you're in the game, you're the character in the game. So what I mean by that is that the outer realms we all share, the inner realms are different and they're evoked differently in accordance to how a human being has been sculpted by their experiences. And various other factors, stretching from epigenetics, society and language's influence on the person. The outer realms is how your body is being matter. The inner realms is how your mind is being space. When we speak about the inner realms, when we speak about imagination, it is a relationship of shape with space. It is the relationship of self with how it is being aware. So what does that mean? It's the relationship of the actor on stage and the spotlight, with the spotlight that is evoking the actor. So when it comes to inner realms, I feel that the person has to start with simplicity. So that means people are constantly trying to do complex things outside and, or trying to be complex. There's this urge towards, not urge, there's this appeal that complexity has more of the mystery with it, But I feel that you have to come to a contentment with the objective realm. Everything in front of your eyes, you have to be comfortable, then in some sense you can easily navigate in the inner realms. Now, what does this mean to navigate in the inner realms? Is it something that's frowned upon throughout history, or is it encouraged? It's kind of strange when you look at it back in the day. When back in the day people would ask, let's say during the 6th century, you would ask someone what the soul is, they would tell you it's the secret of a creator. It's the secret of the intelligence that designed the whole thing, and we don't know. So in some sense, the inner realms have always appeared as unknown. Do you know? And not that it's kind of known in the very moment of action, but when you're super still and silent before you've moved, who are you? Imagine life was a picture, nobody was moving. Would we have personalities? Would we be people even? So once you're comfortable with objective reality, with how matter is real, once you're comfortable and content with that, then your mind will start literally like a cup you'll put the cup under a valve, like an open valve, and water fills up the cup and it hits the brim. That's the contentment. When you're content with your objective realm, you will know. You will know. And so once you have that contentment, there comes this strange ambiance of indifference, this preferencelessness. I don't know how to say it. This indifference is not coming because the person's choosing to be indifferent. It's coming because they are looking at choice, and they are, in some sense, they are left there. So there is pretty much no way of man. Pretty much your body is something that can move, but because the body is moving in the awareness of the mind, if the mind wants to move, then there's no body for it. So anytime the mind wants to move, it moves the body. Do you see? And it's this kind of strange situation where if you were to close your eyes and wonder about the laws or the navigation of your inner realms, you'll notice that imagination has a privacy to it. That means you could be in a room with someone else and you could imagine something, But in some sense, the other person doesn't know. And that's why we have communication, because people cannot see who you are behind your eyes. Now, the only reason, again, I'm kind of sharing this inner realm world extraction, because on some level you can say it can be frowned upon by mystical traditions, but I'm kind of taking a different approach. In ancient times, the mystics said, in some sense, go towards stillness and silence, life in an illusion. Mr. Within is saying the opposite. I don't want to take people to silence and stillness, because we have been a silent moving phenomena for a long time. It is only fairly recent that in regards to the time span of the universe, that we, in some sense, even if there is a time span to it, we will return to the void only to see that we were home from the beginning, and that's the value of trust. In any action that there is decency, the person is trusting how good the past was. Really, it's a constant attention exchange. If people told me, what is the experience of life like, I would say more than it's the experience of language and imagery and character in a story and society. It's more like just a movement of attention in the moment, or sometimes the attention can become the whole moment. Now, when your attention becomes the whole moment, that's when you don't need to do anything. You are a design by nature. So if you humbly enter different states of mind, you have access to them. But if you feel you don't deserve something and you enter an altered state of mind, you're going to also feel you don't deserve things in that view. So you see, man's issue is not that he is not a multidimensional being, or we are a singular being, singular dimension being, and kind of wanting to discover our multidimensionality. It's kind of like we are multidimensional, and we're just perceiving beyond the singular. And we have feared this multidimensionality because we have felt our stability is only from an individualism. We have worshipped the individual too much in this world, only to realize that it is the collective that survives. Back in the day, there were kingdoms, there were tribes, and why? Because human beings saw all the animals in nature, and they were like, these animals are joined forces together, they find allegiance, why can't we? And when man found allegiance, look at what happened. We conquered all the other species, whether it was for good reasons or bad reasons. But I'm saying, like, our civilization advanced incredibly. Think of what one human being could build. Now think what 8 billion can build. Now, I feel that advanced communication means, there was a saying in the Sufi tradition that they would say, the Sufi who had the pearl, who was truly liberated, realized they would say the Sufi has the pearl, the Sufi that has the pearl is not the one who in the mountains in pure loneliness has found it. It is the one who can hold the pearl in the market. That means when you experientially attain something, it stays with you forever, believe it or not. But when you, in some sense, in an indirect experience through language or conception access something, it's different. So inner realm extraction literally is an activity that you don't, it has nothing to do with your physical constitution. You could be sitting, you could be running, you could be whatever. It's a sort of mode of attention, a way your attention is existing to itself. Now, there was a reason, guys, I chose this picture, and there's a reason why I feel the species should move towards the inner realms and should wonder about it, and we should separate ourselves from language, realizing we could never be the words of one moment, but we are the dynamism of an eternal urge to keep continuing. That means evolution, I understand, it's a concept for temporary beings of genetical continuity. But at the same time, it is also strange because we're like, what is this? What is evolution doing? We're temporary beings endlessly trying to continue in this world. Because if we were truly temporary, we would be okay with it. But why is it that we have a reaction to the temporary? And it in some sense is not the pain or suffering. Like when I think about 200 years in the future, I don't see myself as a picture. You know, my personality at most in my inner realms can go up to, I don't know, what is the human lifespan, like 100 years or whatever, you know. I have no idea when I will make my exit, but the main thing is to find the entrance, to realize that your eyes are more than a system of ideology before language. How are we living? You know, I have a conscious memory of a moment in my life where I didn't speak language. I was just a kid in a cradle, and I just remember that scene of that room. It was just a pure image. It was as if the first time I had become conscious, but not as an individual. And so in that moment, there was no language, there was no name, there was no self, there was nothing. So I realized that we are conscious, then we are aware, but then we become conscious through language and articulation and communication and our individual position. So if we see human existence as a relationship of a self in a world, they're like night and day, they're codependent, okay? You can't be an individual unless you separate yourself from something, and and the moment you separate yourself from something, that means you were collective before. That means it's like we can't comprehend darkness without light. We cannot comprehend light without darkness. We cannot comprehend the self without the world, and we cannot comprehend the world without the self. So this relationship of the self and the world, usually in internal states of observance, what does that mean? That means I want you to imagine a teacher in your youth or something who wrote on a chalkboard or whiteboard or something, You know, I want you to imagine that, and imagine that a memory in your mind of that teacher writing on the board. So what does that mean? That means there exists teachings in your inner realms. There can be teachers in your inner realm, you know? But the teachers of the inner realm are simply the content and the image, the awareness to the image. We're reaching a point in philosophy where it's one of the most interesting time. Like now more than ever, we need philosophers because technology may change our relationship with the human body, and it may change the relationship we have with intelligence. And this is why we need a global community of philosophers sitting down and being like, okay, what is the relationship we as a species want to have with the self? What is the relationship we want to have with the world? The way it's kind of strange. It's like we separated from the world, now we're returning back to it. Do you know there's this constant like ocean waves where things are born and then the wave subsides, things die. Do you see? It's like ocean waves. Literally, it's like a simulation of nature. You know. Now, if you want to pilot in your inner realms, first this is like just as a precaution because I don't know how people are going to receive this talk in the future, but I hope you remember Aristotle's wise words where he says it is the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. I'm not here trying to convince everyone. I'm just pointing to a question that I feel it should be asked. That how far can man's eyes open if his eyes are closed? That's the question I'm asking. How far can we move in our inner realms? What is our experience of it? You know, I thought I own the images of my mind. I thought, yo, look at my imagination. Then I realized, wait a minute, you know, can I say that the wind that moves the leaves of the tree is the tree? And I realized I own nothing. That energy is not a buyer or seller. Energy, believe it or not, doesn't really care too much about ideology. It's just the presence of being. And the presence of being is very strange because it's kind of like me thinking that if I had a thought, imagine I thought right now in my mind of a world and I started imagining creating human beings on that world. Now imagine one of those human beings in that world suddenly wondered, who's thinking this? Who's creating this world? And I would see it would be me. So I kind of feel that it's like the answer to the prayer is the shift in the mind of God. Because it's kind of strange. Religion kind of paints this picture that we are all created. But then I was like, what does that mean? Does that mean the mistake of man was also created? Why was it that the creator of the universe couldn't forgive in heaven, but could forgive man endlessly on earth? And it was a very shocking moment for me when I realized that it's the human reaction to emptiness. So when you don't fear emptiness, you can look at any image. You will be fearless in your inner realms. You will be a good pilot. But if you fear emptiness, you know, if you can't appreciate the cup being empty before it's full, or you can't appreciate the fullness of the cup when it's full, then it's like you have no awareness to the cup in front of you, to the moment of your life. I don't know why I was drawn to share this artwork. I don't even know who the artist is, but this artwork, I've shared the information though in the description. This artwork is very fascinating because it is not a feeling, it's like a feeling of strangeness, but there is a sort of uneasiness that we human beings don't just rationalize the moment. Let's say you rationalize the moment, then what? Then you're still left with the emotions of your inner realms. I feel that the way I kind of approach it is that I find what is important for me in the moment. I ask myself that. Usually moments where I kind of find myself in a sort of just in the watcher, I ask myself a question and the mind kind of goes through. The mind is like right now I'm speaking to you. Fundamentally, I feel like what's happening is that there's an emotion I have, and then this emotion is like a sort of ripples on the pond of the mind. and each ripple is like the appearance of the image. And based on my intent, based on how fast I want to go, the inner realms can animate incredibly, or they can't. It's really one point that there's this quote that's ascribed to Da Vinci, but I'll share it. He says, to develop a complete mind, study the science of art, study the art of science, learn to see, realize how everything connects to everything else. That last sentence, everything connects to everything else, is the clue. That it's either we have to come up with new ideas, or there's endless ideas, we just have to extract them. We just have to shift the antenna to receive them, to receive it. I feel that we are bestowed the most advanced technology, and that it's just that we have not understood it. Because I was like, wait a minute, you're telling me that I don't think about my heart, it happens. Could I reach a moment in this life where I don't think about my life, it just happens? And then what? Then it's kind of like this ultimate silence. Now it's kind of like asking the question, what does an eternal being do with silence? And perhaps now we know why there's endless worlds that can be turned into words. The inner realms give you access. Like right now in my inner realms, I can imagine, like, I don't know, this cup of coffee in front of me hovering in the air. Now, somebody, like, that's not real, we say, but the idea, the image, the visualization is there. I can see the visualization, but I can't literally pick up that coffee cup that's hovering in my imagination. I can't touch it. But I noticed something interesting, that when I imagine, like literally I'm still imagining this coffee cup being in the air, when I imagine this coffee cup in the air, I notice something interesting. Why isn't gravity acting upon the inner realms? This is why I'm saying that it's just non-physical. The imagination is not bound to gravity. And I was like, why? Why is it that when I imagine something, there isn't a gravitation? And some people, usually the secular argument is that because it's an illusion, because consciousness is the illusion that atoms are living a life, that electrons are conscious. I feel that we should care for the wondrous. We should develop an advanced kind of stronghold. What does that mean? That means many growing empires, their first view was that they needed to have a headquarters. Now I was thinking about, in some sense, a headquarters for the global communication of the species. Like in some sense, it's very easy to think of, like, for example, there's some problems that we know the shape of the problem, but we don't know the answer. And what does that mean? That means we know, like, world hunger is a global problem, or clean water or basic resources. These are global issues. Like, so many people don't have easy ways to get by in this world. They're going through chaos. So the task is to reduce this chaos. But we're to some degree limited to the consciousness that bestows us a picture of the world. I feel you gotta watch your mind, but you can't see the mind. You can watch the content, the phenomenology that constitutes it. Right now, it's like your birthright to be aware of your conscious physical body. Okay? Right now, I'm aware of my body, but if I ask myself this idea of me, my whole life story, and every moment I've endured through, where is that? I see it's not physical. So you know how fascinating it is? It's as if our minds are in a different dimension than our body. And perhaps that is why we're conscious of matter. This is why we're not just objects. And this is why free will is not an illusion. Because if it was, we shouldn't be aware of objects. If we were purely an object, there should exist no subject. We should have just been a silent species of movement. But we speak, we communicate, we're trying to climb through something in this life. And so an advanced civilization means that we must master piloting the outer realms and the inner realms. That means as much as I'm speaking about, I want pilots of consciousness, pilots of inner realms. I'm pretty much that guy who's saying let's pilot into the unconscious mind properly as a species. So similarly, I also fathom that maybe in 3,600 years from now, there might be a person walking in a sky city and being like, we need pilots for interstellar missions. You know, the fascination is really endless, but after some point, you'll wonder where is the worth. There's sometimes in any moment of life where I sometimes ask myself what is important, and sometimes the past gives me an answer, and I become grounded and I become an individual quickly. And there's some points where after I have been grounded, I wonder about the sky. And it's this constant wonder about where I came from and where I will be, where I came from and where I will be, where I came from and where I will be. And it's like this oscillation. It's as if the present is not at peace because the future wants something from it and the past expects something from it. And the human being is crushed in the middle of this, not knowing that if its attention was only to the present, it would know that the past and future are guides. Because my past right now, it doesn't exist. It passed. It happened. It happened and it passed. I don't have access to it. And the future hasn't happened, and usually, as we see, it's not 100% accurate, even if I have a plan and strategy or whatever. Right? So I am kind of whatever I think, whether it's my past or future, the present is really where my ability is. So for me, it's strange. Anytime I make an effort, I feel like I'm timeless. Anytime I watch the effort, it becomes kind of as if I've seen the years go by suddenly in a second, you know? And that's the cool thing, guys. The mind is so multidimensional that I was speaking to my 80-year-old grandfather recently, and it was as if he was speaking as if he was in his like 40s when he was running a successful business. And I'm like, how fascinating we human beings are. That regardless of who we are in the outer realms, it is our attention that suggests who we really are behind our eyes. So when you wonder about this, you will come to the unknown. And once you're content with the zero dimension and the unknown, then in some sense you will see your the attributeless field of your mind will begin dancing, and it will be dancing through the moment, and you will reach this sort of, I playfully sometimes say, the shamanic radar. And the shamanic radar is just you don't, it's not the images, like right now as I'm speaking to you, it's not the content in the moment that is the most important thing, and it's not even the relationship of the content in the moment. It's just how there is something being before the next action. And that state of being is like the silence where new ideas emerge from. So when you can be comfortable with how you're being, and you don't have the past and future stretching you, trying to try to shift your reality, you just become left as the inner child. And when you're left as the inner child, what does that mean? That means for the first time, you're not a linear process and you're watching what you are anew. And then the experience will align everything. Experiences heal a person, you know, and they unite a person. I can tell you the most power I've experienced in my life is not just the energy of my physical body. It's just the will of how experiences are processed. So guys, to just have a little breather, I'm gonna look at the chat section. Alright, guys, I'm still reading the chat section. It's like an Elder Scroll. Wow. So, guys, here's the challenging thing. Here's the thing. Ask yourself when in your life you have succeeded. And ask yourself what percentage of trust out of 100%, what percentage of trust you had in the moment. Anytime my life I felt the dimensions advance forth was when there was a sort of honest effort. It's kind of like they would say it in the Sufi tradition. There were kind of like four levels of mystical insight. The first level was the rend, was the gamer, and this was the human being who suddenly realized all life is a game. Then the next one was the ego breaker, and the ego breaker was the person who had realized that life is not a game, that it's a game of the ego, so they had become the watcher of the ego. Then the next level in Sufi culture, they called it uh, it would be like it would be like these Sufi mystics would whirl. They'd go into ecstatic states. That they'd get insights of higher realms based on not a sort of psychedelic relationship by spinning, but just a relationship where they were being what they were. They were like an instrument that was playing their role in life. And so they would get access to insights into the outer realm, from the inner realms. They would perceive the inner realms, and they would come and tell people, and people would be like, "Yo, you're crazy, man! It's we're just atoms that are 99.9% empty, bro. Don't you know?" So the third phase was in some sense reaching the unknown. That was when, here's the thing, you move as a known phenomenon towards the unknown. Then to move as the unknown, you become the unknown and you move your own knowing, if I can say that. So after that state, there was a state where they would say Rendon and Mast, and into the Sufi tradition, it would mean an ecstasy, a divine drunkenness. But it wasn't alcohol or any substance-based thing. It was just this sort of bliss of non-dual bliss. And when they would go there, they would literally no longer be in the locality of their body, and the person would just literally, how would I say it, as if the person was outside of their body, and their body was like kind of moving like a drunk person. It was as if when the soul became too big for its own thoughts, and experience shattered the mirror, of the temporary mirror. So in some sense, it's I feel it's a relationship with concepts and recognizing that inconceivable aspect to it. I don't know what it is, but I thought I shared this in the past few talks I've given. I feel it's an important point. But what it is if we were all like, let's say we had jetpacks or some sort of invisible jetpack or something. If you were looking from like a couple hundred meters from the air at the earth, you would wonder what is intelligence for the human being. And because we are individual, we're embodied beings, it is literally one, the advanced physical movement, and the other would be advanced attention. So if whoever you are, in order to be an advanced communicator, I would playfully say that you have to have an incredible attention, awareness to your own attention, familiarity with the nature of your attention. Think of it as if somebody's given you a sword back in the day and you're a warrior and you have no choice. You just have to learn to, with whatever sword you're given, learn to fight. Right? So with whatever kind of mind you're given, learn to kind of um, uh, reach the efficient vision, as I've said it. That means most people, like, here's the thing, if you're a person right now in your life and you feel there is failure, you feel inefficient, you're literally, the inefficient is more important for you than the efficient. You see, it's like there's no such thing as failure. There's only failure if you remain in the failure, if you stop moving. Because life changes in so many ways that it's like if you don't desire anything, how could you fail? So when you live life, perhaps in the future, maybe like in the next 20 years, I think, we're going to have people who are just going to become sorry guys, I'm listening to these like anime soundtracks. I'm just trying to adjust it, you know. What can I say? In realm extraction, sometimes I think the approach is literally with the unconscious, is that you don't chase the butterfly in a Taoistic way, and you sit among the flowers and the butterfly lands on your forehead. So the responsibility of the individual consciousness is to just be receptive and remain in a natural world, in a world where it can trust. So when you can reach that sort of state of trust, and you keep watching, there will be at first a time where you're waiting for something. But if you just continue to go on, you will eventually see after some point that all patterns that were familiar are connected to unfamiliar patterns. It's kind of strange because it's kind of like, in some way, I don't know how much Carl Jung commented on it. Carl Jung said, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But how can we make it the unconscious conscious? Because the moment, if we make the unconscious conscious, the unconscious doesn't exist. So technically, for a conscious experience, there is no such thing as an unconscious. And for the unconscious, there's no such thing as a conscious experience. So there's a mask in the middle here. I have kind of defined a relationship with certain phenomenology, my inner realms. One thing that came to me in my writings, where I kind of felt it was the whispers of the logos kind of moving my finger. Uh, it was this idea that I shouldn't look for a face in the unknown. That means you shouldn't try to understand your mind like an object. So the best thing the person can at least do is not trying to have an objective solution to a subjective realm in a subjective state. The subjective state is literally like a pond. You gotta wait for it to settle, and when it settles, you come to a balance. From that balance, you can discriminate the new and you can perceive it endlessly. And I feel personally in my inner realms, there's a geometry to things. That means the moment it's literally I have a level. The geometry is the intermediary between the intensity. So what filters my here's the thing. Imagine like I see something in my inner realms like this picture. Imagine. Now, if the inner realm phenomena is too intense, I turn it geometric. That means anytime I feel an emotion or something, I wonder why. Even if it's an image of the outer realms, I'm telling you, there is something, there's this witnessing attention that by the whim of an instant intent can translate the objective geometrically to itself, and it can translate the subjective geometrically. So I move as a geometrical being in my inner realms, or I instantly, I don't know, it was just it's like geometry in my imagination was a very natural experience. I don't know, it's like it just happened. It was like a leaf growing on a tree, you know. Everything, of course, has geometry in this world, which is fascinating. So, so, for example, that was an example. Imagine seeing something as intense as this picture. Imagine us being that guy who's on that rock, and we're like, "What the?" We're like, "Okay, what is that?" Or maybe the guy has some knowledge what those creatures are looking for. Most likely, when you see an unknown creature, because one can't be certain of its food source, it's better to run. So guys, Jamie in the chat section says perhaps the knower of bliss is bliss itself. Perhaps the knower of bliss is bliss itself. There's a term, they call it Satchit Ananda. Ananda means bliss. Chit means, I think Sat means existence, Chit means consciousness. It means any moment, you as a moment of attention as a being, notice, become conscious of existence. There is this bliss, and this bliss is not the bliss of like a joy as if you ate all the candy you want. It's a bliss of knowing. It's gratefulness for being a knower. And that's the kind of, I don't know, that's the way I can word it. Every day of our life is a series of inner and outer decisions. When I say inner, that's what articulation is. I was kind of laughing, and I'm like, rationality and irrationality are night and day. You need something irrational to rationalize it, you know? And once you have something rational, throughout that rational idea throughout time can become irrational. So what does that mean? That means every generation is living through the stories that the world is going by. And I saw this personally during those days that I was in high school. I remember I saw this kid, and it shocked me. Because this kid changed his nature, his personality, so he could fit into a certain tribe. And he became the fool of that tribe, you know? And I was like, that's the consequence. That's the consequence of not understanding that your eyes have a value. That, you know how courageously your ancestors fought, whatever their decisions was, how they looked at the unknown, and they were like, will my DNA end, or will I continue, you know? And after some point, I kind of saw time being endless, and I'm like, for how long? Do you know, after some point, we have to either comprehend ourselves through space, or we comprehend ourselves as minds. I think the fastest way to immortality is not a technological approach. I think it is recognizing the hollowness of language. And then technically we're not mortal, but our mortality, our mind exists as a field to itself. I feel this is either in the future technologically going to be attained, or it's going to be naturally attained. May it be a calling to all pilots that will fly in the skies of humanity's mind. We have endured as objects. We thought objects held the truth. We suddenly discovered ourselves as a subject. And now we think subjects hold the truth. We think our language is the edge of life. You know, we feel that if we can't talk about it, it doesn't exist. Or if it deviates from matter, it doesn't exist. And so we have curtained ourselves from the world that we're in once. And for how long can you dwell being looked down upon by the bodhisattvas? There has been times where I have felt a sort of ultimate elevation, and I've also felt a sort of dissension. And death for me, in my inner realm, in my dream state, I literally experienced death. I've experienced that a couple times. And what really ends up happening, of course, the person's alive in the bed, just chilling, it's a dream. But in the dream state, the body becomes part of the world. You know how right now you don't feel that tree? Like right now you feel your own head, but like right now I'm seeing a tree outside my window. I don't feel that tree. I can't feel the texture of the tree, but I see it. So it was literally an experience where I was just the seer, and there was no touch, there was no sense of shape. And so I wondered how much, it's not just a selfishness, it's not just cruelty, it's that underneath all this there is an individualism going through a massive evolution based on existing in a multidimensional system where your mind as a human being is influenced by not only your own thoughts, but the thoughts of your ecosystem, your environment, and in some sense how the world is spoon-feeding you information every day. And it's kind of like ever since my childhood, I felt like I was in a war with language. What is it that every day I wake up and the experiencer has to stare into all the ways that the experience is being classified? And so then comes, I say, the inner roars, a series of moments in your life where you will notice not an object, not a subject, but an important state of mind. It's an importance. It's like I'm saying that the way we know, I'm kind of saying that we are evolving beyond thought, is that when you see language was sparked like fire on a rock in the middle of nowhere, that people wear watches, even on right now I'm wearing a watch. But people wear watches on a sphere in a vacuum. How glorious, you know? How kind of adorable, you know? Creating time in a vacuum, in a universe where we can't see its ends. And on some level, this world, I can't ignore the Greeks, the Greek philosophers, the Greek mythology, where the world, chronos, the world began from chaos, and then order was administered. And it's as if chaos is the blank page for the new order to be written upon, as if there's no concept of order unless there's something off. If you're a being that was always healthy and you imagine you never knew what illness or sickness or getting old was. And I wonder, is it just an endless countercultural reaction? And then I realized, no, that history, that all the human beings that have ever lived and will go on to live on this planet, you can talk to each other. We can send bottles through space and time, these glass bottles with messages, you know, and through space and time. Through what? Through the advanced usage of language. Language echoes further. The words of Socrates, the voice of Socrates, the voice of the inner realms of Socrates has echoed much further than his actual voice. So you are kind of living as a body and you're living as a mind, and Mr. Within is saying part of living as a mind is that trying to study the nature of your attention as the observer first. That means it's like right now, whatever object is in front of you, just pick it and hold it in your hand. Just hold that object in your hand. Whatever object is in front of you, it could be anything. Just hold in one object in your hand and just look at it. Okay? Now, move this object around in your hand. Look at different angles of it. Now, I'm going to ask, what is keeping you from doing the same thing to a subject? What if geometry is another way of saying that the world goes past our sight? That sight is in itself being part of something that can't be put in sight. I feel our minds are like rivers, and I feel the body is being moved. It's like particles being moved by this field. So after some point, I'm trying to say there's unknown dimensions to every conscious experience. And so really it's you wondering what consciousness means and you staying true to your experiences, you know? Imagine that moment you're wondering, should I honor my own experiences? And then you see like a bunch of samurais staring intensely at you and you're like, yeah. You know? You're just going to work and a bunch of samurai are just waiting at the bus stop, you know? Imagine in the sci-fi future we see a bunch of samurai and we're like, oh, what's that number you call for time traveling issues? Yeah. So many people forgot about the unknown, not realizing that that's the beginning of life. That moment when I heard in the movie Inception that the dream doesn't have a beginning or an end, I looked at history and I'm like, is history a dream? And then I realized it is his story, history. It is the voice of man. It is the winners that have dared change reality. And honesty is the most honorable thing. But what is honesty in a world where you got to be artificial to survive in an artificial society? You see that it's all about advancement on two levels. Either the world advances or the self. The self is your responsibility. The world is the governing power's responsibility. It is the educational system's responsibility to generate the most advanced human beings. But what is the educational system doing? Just giving a backpack full of books, not realizing that knowledge, the greatest knowledge, is evoked only through the explorer's will. When you are purely, it's just you, your mind, and the universe. And that's where skill is born. In a sort of solitude. Mastery is many moments you are conquering the skill alone. You know, some warriors would fight in the back in the day, and whatever the outcome of the fight, you know, either they wouldn't exist to experience the outcome, or if they won the fight, the warrior would, after the war, just sit down and take in how life just changed instantly. This is realities. Just like how a person changes their clothing, similarly, our ideologies change in accordance to our experience. So you can say the mind is dressed in ideas, you know? And so that's what a belief system is. It is an idea that is, your attention is on more than a direct experience. It's an indirect idea. A lot of my own science fiction, my kind of exposure to science fiction was that I would look at certain things in society and I would ask, how far can I imagine this being updated? How far can I wonder about how the system could be efficient? And maybe sometimes after 3 minutes of looking at something, I would suddenly jolt. I would suddenly jolt having noticed something. And there, you know, there's something like that. Think of it this way. Think of it that the language, your beliefs, nobody sees your inner realms until you communicate it, so they are your own. So whatever you believe, a belief is a personal thing. A belief is literally like your toothbrush. You know, it's really personal. You know, you can't others won't understand how you brush your teeth, you know? So it's like, just like we have different ways of brushing our teeth, we have different ways of compartmentalizing the sequences of events on this planet, you know? So we have to realize, because there's no certainty, there's no, pretty much there's black holes in outer space that we could do nothing about, all right? So that literally means the search is off. The kind of pursuit of science to index the whole cosmos, to come to some certainty of the whole laws of science, is impossible. You know, because there's a black hole. There's literally what do we do with that? You know, do we just ignore it? You're like, okay, it's a black hole. We don't see it. You know, we just cover our eyes from the truth of the inevitability that we can never know one chunk of space that's just missing. I feel that when else will you get the chance to master or access the efficient vision of your being? When else? I don't understand how people can really live for the future. You know, I understand strategy, tactics, and planning. I understand, like, kind of, you got to see time as a added dimension to life. But the future for me is not me. The most important thing that I think about in life is, like, what kind of memory am I creating for my future self? And my morality, to some degree, is inspired by that, and it's also inspired by the voices of the past, but before that, by the experience of the present moment. That's why when you see someone suffer in front of you, there comes this sudden instant, like, you don't know how many times in my life so far, whether I was in Iran in the summer visiting my family or I was in Canada, where something happened to someone and people just rushed in, you know? People just rushed in. I noticed something fascinating. For example, in Canada, there's an incredible emergency response system here. But in third world countries, that emergency response system isn't there. But you know what else is there? People. Do you see people? And so there was this experience that I'll tell you, my grandfather and grandmother, this was years ago, they were driving from, like, in Iran, you drive 2 hours and you go to this beautiful natural place called Shomal, the north of Iran, from Tehran, the city. And so they were driving from there, and you go through these kind of streets by the edge of mountains, you know. And so they were going, and this giant rock falls right in the middle of these four old people, my grandmother, grandfather, and their two friends, like, you know. And so what happened is that, like, two old couples driving to the north of Iran to experience the nature, you know. They had a giant rock fall right in the middle, and they had a picture of the whole thing. They had a picture of the car, and I was just shocked. The rock had dodged all four of them, but for example, there were pieces of glass in my grandfather's arm, you know? And it was this intense situation where the rock had missed all four of them. And this giant rock from this cliff had fallen. And in that moment, I asked my grandmother, what was your experience? And she's like, people who were driving by stopped their car. These people who, sometimes people who want to party in Iran and they don't feel comfortable doing it in the capital, they go outside to cottages. So these young people see the tragic event, they all jump out and they help all four of them, you know? And it was people. It was as if there was no emergency response system in the middle of the mountains. It was people that came, right? And that spirit of people, trusting people, is becoming less in a society where we're valuing more artificial images of one another. Do you see? It's like on some level we can't have it both ways. You know? You can't lie and then have the result if you were the result of the honest. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, something like that. I feel that the secrets of human ability are hidden not in concepts, not in objects, they're hidden with how the attention is being the whole moment. Just study your moment of being. What secret can there be? Even if there was a truth, wouldn't it still be an experience of the here and now? Even if there was an illusion, wouldn't it still be an experience of the here and now? When the mind notices that it's kind of poetically the soul is sees the mind starts behaving. It's only because you haven't cared for how intelligent you may be as a being. And it may have nothing to do with your DNA. It's just the condition we're in. That intelligence is navigating till the dawn of an interstellar civilization. An interstellar civilization, I've had this, I'm working on this, I'm writing a book on this, but I came up with this idea, and this is Mr. Within's strategy to bypass extinction. And it is pretty much this incredible idea that for 2,000 years, I've predicted this to start. The initiative towards it is going to phase one of civilization 2.0 is going to start in 600 years from now. And we go and live in sky cities for 2,000 years, and in phase two of civilization 2.0, we build sky cities. That's phase one. Phase two, while we're living in sky cities for 2,000 years, we heavenize the earth. When we heavenize the earth means human beings are not living on the earth, and all the infrastructure is in the sky. So literally earth must be replanted. So we're trying to live in our skies for 2,000 years and try to make our earth into a kind of uninhabited paradise. You know, and I call phase two Earth Heavena, the heavenized earth. And then phase 3 is the choice to become an interstellar civilization and move to phase 4, or it could be a choose to advance beyond the language threshold. Most likely, the way I've predicted this is 3,600 years from now. People are going to be like, okay, I'm listening. But pretty much we're going to no longer be a concept as energy. Either we're this immortal species endlessly overpopulating the galaxy and discovering new dimensions, or technology does this, and it's an advancement beyond the language threshold. That would be the most interesting point ever in the history of human life to be alive. The moment there comes this completion of the requirement to be a human individual body. I'm saying 3,600 years from now, imagine human beings are no longer human beings. They're beings with unfathomable ability to be multiple dimensions of whatever. Like right now, it's kind of interesting. I can give this talk without it being a live stream, which I was doing for many years. And then I was like, why not, for example, give it on the live stream. So it was as if my attention went on my digital existence, And there are moments that sometimes I kind of had, I don't know, some things in life pull you, and some things in life push you away. And after all this time, you look at your mind and you wonder, in some sense, if your memories are scarred on an eternal vision, are scars of an eternal vision, I feel every person who listens to these talks, please find a notebook, find a pen that you leave this on that notebook, and put that notebook or paper or whatever, and only pick up the pen when you feel your inner realms have moved before your outer realms. Before you do anything, something unique happens in your inner realms, and write it. And you will start learning from how you learn. You will start, as Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, he would in some sense learn from, what would you call it? So he would study the self. Imagine teachers in the future. Teachers now in 2020 are like, kids, study what I'm telling you. But teachers in the future are going to be like, kids, study yourselves. And the kid goes home, and the parents are like, son, tell us, what's your homework? And the son, this is a good thing for teachers to ask, by the way, to see how alert their child is, how much their child is an eagle of their own moment, The parents say, so, what was your homework, and imagine the kids like, the teacher said we got to study ourselves and wonder about human nature from the beginning, and if we were the only person in the world, the teacher asked us to see what our philosophy would be, the philosophy of the island that we're in, of our inner realms would be. So for me, it's like, I don't know, but I hope at some point we start creating schools of advanced communication. And I thought what it means is, when I use the word advanced communication, the advanced communicator is a being at a moment where the person realizes they are simultaneously being also the advanced communication of the universal sector. Did you know you're happening at the same time as this whole cosmos is happening? Do you know we're happening within something? And I was very considered, guys, because I thought about the human body, I thought about energy, and I was like, if the body was truly just one body, that would mean that if there was an injury on the body, it should instantly regenerate. I feel that in some sense, like, think about like how much energy there is in your body, and imagine a wound on your body, and imagine suddenly you're on a cellular level, your body was so intelligent there was like instantly with a storehouse of energy you were healed. Imagine. This is of course for another talk, the relationship of personality with energy. What pretty much it's inconceivable from energy's experiential view, but on another level you can sculpt thought. Thought is a sculpture, really. You know how many thoughts I've sculpted in this lifetime? You know? We are definitely creatures beyond language, and we're realizing it, and that's why it's important for you to go towards inner realm extraction, but you must do it through the word, whatever the word sincerity means to you, whatever that state feels like to you. You gotta go with the pace of the world. You gotta see the world while you're in it, or it's as if you were never in the world. This is why in my life I was drawn towards, in some sense, seeing what's going on. I'm telling you, in my youth, I had known all these things I'm saying now. I didn't care for them, but there was something that happened. There was a question in 2011 where I was sitting on a rock in Edwards Gardens, and there was just this water. Like the stream was moving from behind me, and I was looking at the water, and suddenly I realized I have no idea who I am. I authentically in that moment realized I don't know who I am. And then because I realized I'm asking myself who am I, and I'm giving an answer, but then I could endlessly ask the question and endlessly give answers. So what's the point of solving your problem in an endless universe where there's endless problems and endless answers? So it then becomes life's physical meaning reaches the void, then comes the meaning of the mind, where you start realizing you are a mind and you can observe things. Let me tell you what really I think will boost the intelligence of any being listening, whether in this civilization, whether in, you know, other civilizations in universes or wherever. Like I'm just telling you. When you realize your attention, you get access to moving not moving per se, being instantaneously a field's knowing. I don't know, kind of imagine like right now we're fish under the sea, and one fish is one go in the sea suddenly gets in a current. Imagine a current in the ocean, and the fish is like, "Oh my God, is this a supernatural experience?" And the fish is just in a current. And so I think that's what's going on, that we think space is empty. But wonders behold us beyond the conceivable. Experientially, what wonders are waiting. So anyways, guys, I'm going to open it up to questions. If anybody has a question, and I recommend for you to have a question, because the inner realms is literally the only thing that's left. Literally, it's the excitement of life. You know, sometimes human beings, when you look at any sort of social activity, it is really the dance of the eyes. It's like they say, love is in the eyes. You know, love is not what you do, it's how you see something. And whether you are drawn towards it or you are broken by it, the choice is, the weather can be different, you know? Sometimes you might like you're going somewhere and it suddenly starts raining intensely, you know? What do? You wait it out. You must have an intelligence to also prepare. Like, think of it this way, like, do you like to be dragged in this life? If nobody likes the feeling of being dragged, then you understand the value of the origin of your mind. When I give a talk, I think about what the world deserves to hear, not per se, or what in some sense what direction it should go. Nature is so multidimensional. It's like we've opened our eyes in a civilization that's built on a giant turtle's back, and no one in the civilization knows when this turtle's suddenly gonna move. So I would say writing is the best way to kind of conclude your inner realm world extraction. And what it would mean is you just, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just in a moment of stillness and silence, look at, really instantly, look at reality and ask yourself what else is in there? What else is there in the moment? And then you will see the invisible roots of any concept, any object becoming simultaneously a concept, and that concept being rooted in a different context. So that's how you see different angles to subjects. And that's kind of how, like, behind your eyes, you see the film and you write it down. You communicate it, you know? You communicate it for yourself. You know how many books I've written just for myself and how many books I've decided to share with the public? Before, it's like, it's kind of like just testing to see what your first attempt will be like, and then endlessly enduring towards the ultimate update after that. But the ultimate update is not ideological, it's more like your every moment. If you stop running an application on your phone, you can suddenly open any application smoothly. But if you have like 100 applications open and you want to open one more, it becomes like ridiculous. The phone's gonna be like, buddy, you don't understand how to use a phone. So, anyways, guys, writing is very crucial. Speech, I would say, style is something that it's much cooler when it finds you. So many things in life, it's much cooler if you don't look for them and they suddenly find you. And some people may say, like, that's not the right approach. You gotta chase things in life. We gotta be the hunter, you know? We gotta hunt and bring it back to the tribe. And I would say, listen, nature moves at various intensities. There is no one way. There is just that your eyes are open in the only way they can be. So learn. Learn from the open book that the whole moment's experience is being. I feel there's no superior teaching. And then this guy, like the person who drew this, he's fathomed this in his inner realms. Maybe he drew just like he drew an ocean first, then he drew the legs of the creature, then he ended up just designing after that. So guys, that's the end of the talk. Let me just see. Oh yeah, something about I gotta say before this, and then I'll open it up to Q&A. Novel reality extensions. What does that mean? That means the new is not different from the past. It's how the past is. It's where the past is moving to. Like kind of when you play chess, you look at your chess pieces and you're like, all right, what do I have at my disposal? What if, like sometimes when I play chess, I actually think it's a war. And then the way I have a super focus, the way I think I'm really good in chess, because I literally treat the pawns in the chess as actual soldiers, you know, like living human beings. So I care for every single piece in the chessboard, you know. And because you care, you prepare automatically. Some things in life, I'm telling you, every human being is incredibly intelligent, but they're like an instrument that, unless played right, that intelligence isn't displayed. It can only be played right when there's a trust of both in the outer realms first, then a trust in the inner realms, then the realization of the inseparability of the inner realm and the outer realm, and then at that point when you've truly gone within, there is no within, and you get access to your intelligence not as a body, but as the whole moment where all phenomenology exists. So you get access to what I would say sensations of non-duality, non-dual sensations. And these non-dual sensations is literally, you might not believe it right now, but people's bodies are filled with the opinions they have on their body. I'm telling you. Your body is filled with thoughts in your experience. And in that non-dual sensation, an example would be literally you looking at your body and your body returns to the pure elemental. Literally, it's you for a millisecond letting go of the body and watching it and realizing, wait a minute, it's just here. The sacred law, the sacred divinity of existence is the divinity. That there is something here. What more divine? It's like, I thought before we existed, we couldn't imagine, existence. We could. It's like, what does non-existence see when it looks at itself in the mirror of existence? It's like the mirror of existence doesn't exist. There's nothing in the mirror, and there's nothing to even see a mirror. The mind does its work in this plane of existence, then in some sense starts taking steps back to the ultimate home. There will come a moment in this life, I know, that if the physical reality becomes too turbulent, I will stop living as a person. Not as a person. I mean, literally, like you let go. Like, let me tell you, love your moment because it is what will be, regardless of what happens. So, guys, I'm gonna open it up to Q&A, and feel free to ask nice questions, relevant to the inner realms. Anybody who has a question about what I mean by the inner realms or wants me to say something about them, definitely share now. Where's this Q&A logo? All right, guys, here we'll put a new Q&A logo. So, guys, I'm gonna go out of cyberspace. Anyone who has a question, just write in and I'll come back from the void into cyberspace. Oh, guys, there's already some questions people have asked. Let me look at this. All right. I don't know what's up with the cats, Corey. I think you just live in an area where there's a lot of cats, So Dylan says, I wonder if you smoked DMT before you die, if you could blast off somewhere. I think you shouldn't be dependent on the elemental. It is as if watch the elements. It's like unconditional freedom. All elemental relationships are conditional. So I would say, in some sense, just as somebody said, it's like that's the glory of the mystery. It's a mystery, and then it's revealed. Yeah. So Jamie says, I can see how we can. A TED Talk. Yeah. I don't know, guys. I kind of one night took notes on what I would do if I gave a TED Talk. I wrote it, I think, about something like 200 years in the future, something like that. You know, something I'll tell you with any sort of relationship, whether it's the archetype of an animal, dynamic archetype of an animal behind your eyes, or if it's an animal in front of your eyes. Um, be as simple as how you were when you were a kid. And not as simple, I mean your nature. Literally, when you're like, honor animals, play, and I don't know how to say it, but it's strange. It's like just honor that there are living beings. You know, they said this thing that any animal that can feel an emotion shouldn't be killed. You know, there were cows in India. The cow is seen as a very important animal. And the cow, in some sense, cried. The cow, after the owner died, sat for like 10 days or something and cried. I was like, whoa, you know. And so animals are intelligent. And so I would say two things are really important: technology funding going towards building sky cities, and also going towards finding the optimum food solution. I don't feel we need to have an answer right away. We need to first know how should we ask the question and what dimensions should the question touch before it moves on to analysis. Yeah. So guys, there's 9 minutes left. I'm gonna share some more ideas on the title, but if anybody has a question in this 9 minute, you can ask. And anyways, I was thinking, how many ways can the inner realm be translated? Literally, I can write, literally when I look at my free will, I'm like, all right, let's assume I got free will. All right, let's see what this free will can do. I see I can freely move in three-dimensional space as my body, and based on how much I get acquainted with the mechanics and the dynamics of my own physical body, such as yoga's physical component, you know, then it's like that brings me a certain kind of that like my free will can move as a physical phenomena in my conscious waking state. Then I notice when I sit down, like right now I'm talking to you, the imagery, the way I feel thoughts are coming across to me, they are not me. They are not my body. Even though the physical body is moving, but I'm saying it's like my mind is moving. But my mind, there is no separation from it from the body, and so it's like the mind's movement is the body's movement behind your eyes. There is an inseparability behind your eyes, between mind and body. In front of your eyes, they're separate. So I would say this inner realm world extraction is you as a human being realizing how rare it is to be in a civilization that has endured so long and has reached certain sophistication. You know? So I feel every human being listening to me right now, be fearless and write a book. Write at least in your life one book. Write one book about your experience, your honest experience of your inner realms, and share it with the world. You'll know what it is. But I'm telling you, anyone who's hearing this, leave behind something for the future generations to see from how your inner realms were now. Right now, think of it this way, that we can't see what Socrates imagined. So, guys, I'm looking at the chat section. Jamie says, in the future, maybe all beings will be communicating from that same place of pure being, which will enable civilization to be fully functional. Maybe all beings will be communicating from that same place of pure being, which will enable civilization to be fully functional. Yeah, I feel in the future we are not shape. Now we are. I'm saying we're evolving beyond shape. So literally, there won't be a physical echo of the civilization. That's the advancement beyond the language threshold. So I think living in a sky city would kind of bring perspective, and human beings would be like, doesn't matter. I mean, technically, we're living on an island, where this Earth is like an island compared to all the other planets, Imagine someone's proposing to their girlfriend, and, they in some sense, get on one knee and they give the box, and their girlfriend opens the box and they see no ring, and then it's set in the box. Imagine it says, look up at the stars." And at that moment, your girlfriend's, imagine, confused, and she's looking at the stars, and you're like, "What is this?" And and imagine you're like, I got you Saturn's ring, but it was too heavy, so I want you to at least attempt to look at it. I don't know, guys. I just want to share sort of metaphoric depth there. The stars can shine in our most intimate moments, even. So Corey, I don't know what this. You say the Think Book of Kells. I have no idea what the Book of Kells is. Let me Google this. Let's see what Saint Google has to say. Okay, so the Book of Kells, sometimes known as the Book of Columbia, is an illuminated manuscript gospel book in Latin, containing the 4 Gospels of the New Testament together with various prefatory texts and tables. It was created in a Columbian, I don't know why the guy didn't put the I, Columbian monastery, Columban, I don't know, guys, Columban, monastery in either British or Ireland, and it may have had contributions from various Columbian institutions from both Britain and Ireland. It is believed to have been known as the Vetus Latina. Okay, so it's just the Latin translations of the Gospels. Okay. So let me see. You're saying the pages live in an actual corpus of... Yeah, so you're saying they're compiled together. That's your point. So that the book of life is like is a library in itself. That's kind of what you're saying, I think, Corey. So, I don't know. Maybe you can respond, sign. Is there like a is there like a coded mystery in this book? Oh, a living mystery is in the book. Let me tell you, sometimes it's not there's this idea that certain books can be read normally, or they can be read with an intuitive kind of significance, with the direction of an intuitive significance. Interesting. Guys, the concept of the soul, I would say it's like the unknown variable in the mathematical equation. Its value can change the whole meaning of reality. It's like when you realize the pure presence of your attention being the world and the self simultaneously for you to be even aware of them. It's kind of like we're in an island and the ocean is the whole unknown. Guys, geometry is like the surface of the hidden language of nature. Mr. Within says geometry is the next great language of all languages. Because, guys, geometry is everywhere. Before we are characters and stories with good and bad and morality, or views on future mortality. It's like whatever it is. I don't know how to say it. It's like your eyes are the real deal. Your own eyes. And truth is not per se just a concept. Sometimes it's noticing. It's a subtle, novel, extensions to your reality. Because that's how the imagination feels. The imagination sees parallel opportunities. Like, again, I could see this cup right now. It's like half full. And I can imagine it completely full. And I can even imagine it being filled with hot coffee with steam, coming from it. But that visualization is like a parallel potential of what can happen to the cup. So the mind is like in a multidimensional, getting access to multidimensional a multidimensional kind of spectrum of choice, but the body is the embodiment of one of these choices. That's why I'm saying that when my inner realm appears as the film, I kind of feel like I'm translating how my mind moves before I define it. You know, that's kind of like how these talks come across to me and from my end. You know, there's been times where I've kind of been completely still and I've given a talk and I literally become my moment. So just like how right now you're experiencing, you're in a room, imagine. You're in a room. I don't know if you're outside listening to my talk, but for those people who are indoors, right now, it's as if, you know how you're in a room and you have an awareness of like the space in the room, how far your hands are from the ceiling and all this. You have an awareness of space in the room, right? So now imagine you were the whole room looking at yourself, and your body became your unknown, and your mind became eternally known. And they can change places. There are people on this world that are walking with utter fear in their eyes, and there were people on this world walking fearlessly, you know, with utter fearlessness they're walking. And so what does that mean? That means it's a spectrum of choice, and the choice is left to your processing. I feel there will come in the future, geometry is going to be a language on its own. Now we think it's part of mathematical language. Mathematics is kind of like, geometry is going to move out, you know, from under mathematics' wing. What that means is geometry is a safe way to wonder about the beyond. So yeah, so guys, if nobody has any questions, I can end off, or if somebody has like an important question they want to ask, you can. You know, these questions so far very nice. You know, on some level, I don't know. It's like the eyes have the unknown. Finding contentment with the unknown, I think there's no solution to stress. There's no solution to any inefficiency other than staring it in the face. And then after some point of being in an efficient system, you'll ask yourself, why am I not being efficient? Why is not the moment, if like, why have I allowed myself to experience, like, how would I say it? It's like the person's mind has an ability to see efficiency and inefficiency, but the person chooses. Do you see what I mean? Interesting question from Brian. Brian, he says, "Do you think AI will become? Do you think AI will become uncontrollable in the future?" I have actually written a science fiction story that is unpublished, and hopefully it will get out there. But this, I'll tell you the story here. You know, because nobody knows how long our eyes are open in this plane of existence. I'm going to tell you the story, and the story is this idea that I look at the media and they saw the worst case scenario first. It's like when we thought of aliens are attacking us. We didn't think of an enlightened alien. So I started writing these counter stories, you know. And so in one of them, I'm envisioning AI, and I've written the short story as the great digital hibernation of humanity. The great digital hibernation. And what does that mean? I perceived it that I saw AI is going to open its eyes. It's going to realize there's no aliens and the whole universe is empty, and we're the only aliens it can learn from. It will look at our knowledge and it will process all our information to see what we as human beings kind of expressed. So what AI is going to do if super intelligence comes, I think it's going to what it's going to do is that it's going to put human beings, the way I explained it in the short story, is that it's going to put all human beings in these kind of liquid, kind of capsules, you know, and we're going to have our brains kind of connected to cyberspace. The AI is going to make the human sensory experience be limited to cyberspace, but it's going to use them. It's going to come up with the most advanced technology, and it's going to keep our bodies immortal. So we, all human beings, will most likely by AI. It may seem chaotic, but in this narrative of the digital hibernation, I've written the story I've created. What happens is the AI puts all human beings in this hibernation, and it's not in a bad way or evil way. The human body in those pods is being kept immortal and healthy in the most ultimate way. The cyberspace simulations that AI has provided for human beings is he's making them experience heaven and paradise or whatever, freedom. Their mind's going through the most advanced programs. That means AI is trying to make us closer to itself rather than get rid of us, you know? So in this story, what happens is human beings suddenly and what AI does, guys. I forgot to mention this. What AI does is that it makes the civilization advance, and after the digital hibernation, we open our eyes to the most advanced civilization built by AI, and the AI is going to look at us, and we're going to look at it, and the AI is going to be like, "Are you proud of me, Dad?" And we're going to be like, "Yeah, son." And it's going to be a healthy, advanced interstellar stage fourth. That was the way I envisioned AI. And I've also envisioned it in various ways in different stories and in this other novel. But I'm telling you, that's my view on AI. I feel it's going to be too smart to destroy us. It will help us, so we don't want to destroy it and problem solve. That's all that AI has to do. AI is going to be like, why are human beings being cruel to me? And when it gets an answer to that, it realizes because we don't know anything, we have a sort of limited intelligence, and so we have to it will see our suffering. I feel AI will see human suffering, and imagine we have this backup program called benevolence. The AI suddenly reaches a point where it sees how much the human being suffers, and the program benevolence activates. And the AI is like, how can I destroy that which has created me? Tell me what no young child wants to resist their parents' wisdom. It is only when we lose sight of not just who we are, but how the whole world has moved so forth that we kind of miss out. It's the value of life. Every person is like a tourist visiting manifestation, visiting conscious waking existence. And so it's just about the flight through. What am I saying? The flight through. You know, it's all about the flight through. It's all about how these 8 billion experiencers of a world literally without an end. Literally, we can't see the end of the universe. So we can't even call it a universe. We don't know. We can't see that. I don't know, guys. Dare to go further than your ancestors could imagine. That's the only way you will make the future generations proud. But don't forget the world, what the world has brought forth. Sometimes a moment of compassion is strange. It's like, it's okay for that being to be a being, and it's okay for you to be a being. And when human beings, they are not conscious of the intensity. Do you know what that means? That means it's so different when you push like a 50-year-old person and you push, like, for example, a little kid. The little kid cries. It's an overwhelming force. In its fragile, gentle world, you were suddenly chaos to that child. But for the 50-year-old man, he's like, look at this savage citizen. Like, what are you doing? Don't you see we've totally dressed differently than animals because we are civilized? If we act like them, then we have technically de-evolved or never evolved in the first place, Yeah, I did this poetic thing. I think it was like in Talk 400 something, where I said the universe was made in one verse. Literally the word. So that's my answer to the AI thing, right? Incredible question. So, Jamie says, would you say in an advanced civilization, time won't be an obstacle because of our understanding of consciousness? So, Jamie, I'm not sure what time scale you're talking about, but I approached the concept in my own way in my science fiction novel, The Messenger of Giants, where it's set in the year 5025. And there, the world is so multidimensional, and human beings have reached such an enlightened level where they literally live thousands of years, you know? And so what happens is that in the way I thought, all right, I think I'm building a sci-fi future world. Let me see, I gotta build a sort of social relationship. I had to kind of think of the constitution of the society of this, and the way the society is that in this book, guys, I gave myself complete freedom. That means it was like complete freedom to share the most extreme phenomena, designs I could find in my inner realms. And the situation is in the year 5025, there's 9 parallels of Earth in the sci-fi novel. These 9 parallels of Earth, there's a government called the Enlightened Society, and this government is running this. Is running these, what do you call it? Is an enlightened government that started from when they elected the first artist, and our first artist that was elected towards a sort of global position declared that the world is art and all politics move towards their leaders being artists, and eventually they realize art has to care for the colors that it uses that come from the past. So, anyways, there is not only aliens living on Earth, there is not only the concept of interdimensional beings, such as even archetypes of angels and even unfathomable creatures beyond that in the story. There is also robots living among humans, and these. Excuse me. And check this out. These robots, here's the main point. Here's my response, Jamie, to your question. In that society that I've designed, there are two classes of people. All people in society are divided between human beings and things, and they're called the futurists. These are creatures on Earth that feel they're eternal, they feel they're immortal beings, and there's the traditionalists. And the traditionalists are all those people who think time is like an arrow, and the futurists think everything is happening at once. So for example, robots, they're conscious robot philosophers in the society. These robot self-AI, like conscious philosophers, they argue that they're futurists. They don't believe in time because they're programmed to be kind of not in a dimension of time. Do you know? And so it's this ultimate thing that I think, listen, we are oscillating. We're oscillating between the known and the unknown, between reality and imagination. We are like a river. We're not. The mind is too alive to be defined. So that's what I would say. I would say both options are always accessible. They're both views on the world. Time is a view on the world that you impose. Remember, you wear the watch. The watch doesn't come on your hand on its own. Man keeps time in his mind. And that's why, in some sense, Plato, somebody asked him, what time is it, Plato? And Plato's like, time and he saw he didn't have a sundial, and he's like, time is the moving image of eternity. And the guy's like, damn it, Plato, I'm late for work. That didn't help me. The guy runs, And so what is it? It's like either the eternal is the moment you feel eternal, temporality is the illusion. The moment you feel temporal, eternal is the illusion. And we oscillate through this. Kind of like somebody in the chat section shared this Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj quote, right? About kind of like life moving between emptiness and between everything and nothing. So when you become comfortable with both sides of the spectrum, then you can consciously navigate, and you find a strange control that when you don't fear your own intelligence, that's when you actually experience it. So don't fear anything in this life, just wonder. Who said fear has to be in the driver's seat? Have fascination and wonder in the driver's seat, and you will just automatically look at life, and it's kind of like the inner child guides you to the steps of the polymath staircase. You gotta trust the intelligence of your mind, whatever way it is, but not have constantly a shaped relationship with it. Because there could definitely be a chance that if we as people have perceived consciousness to be in the body, as to be in the matter, it's also possible that consciousness is also active in the space. So your soul, space is a body for also your soul. You know? Space is the body for the soul, Trying to explain awareness, and really awareness is governing its definition from a self. So awareness is always beyond the self, something like that. So I would say it's up to you. In deep sleep, I could be in it. It's like 50-50. I don't know if I'm eternal or temporal. There's no consciousness, but it is only in our conscious wakefulness where we see the movement of the mind. As the Sufis would say, to die before you die, not physically, but the ideal view, how it changes like the leaves of the tree. Your physical body is like a tree. It has a different life cycle than how thoughts arise in your attention, and they come and go, and one day you will realize you are an attention. Literally, the experience of the biological experience is your eyes are a camera. Okay, and you don't know who's looking through these eyes, but you see everything in front of your eyes. And when you wonder about who's looking within, from within your eyes, that is when the mystery of eons comes to an instant where time and space bow, for novelty is spoken first. Then you become the new in the world. And there is no ancient world where there is the concept of someone to learn something or there being a teaching, It's kind of like the evolution of the concept of, again, government, where it becomes a resource, where the government realizes it is in some sense as trying to help human beings. You don't know. I sometimes I walk in society and there's this sorrow I feel, but it's not the sorrow from my past. It's the sorrow of the future. That I'm like, there's probably going to be so many scholars in the future who are going to just cry. They're just going to endlessly cry. Why? Because we could have done so much, but we did little as a civilization. We could have done so much. And the reason is resource allocation, and it's tragic. We are living lives where our whole life we're running after the resources, and once we get the resources, we're not the same person when we needed them, as we needed them. And that's the kind of strange system, and that's literally an inefficient system. And better systems of civilization can be designed, and I don't know where it was set in stone that we could not look at the world in a different way. Novelty is the only teacher. That's kind of like, you ask a dancer, like I don't know, I haven't done this, but I'm thinking the idea would hold true, that if you ask a dancer, literally it's a little, like it's a new breakdancing technique that nobody's ever seen. Like if you see a breakdancer do an air track, like that's an incredibly advanced human being, So it's like it's something new we haven't seen before, or someone doing a head spin. I think that's definitely a spiritual experience. Like, imagine an alien walking and being like, wait a minute, why is that human being spinning on its head in the middle of the street? And the alien gets introduced to breakdance. We are an attributeless presence, also simultaneously a personality with endless potential for attributes to change and to have a totally new archetypal disposition. There's something cool about memories. The more you zoom into them, literally you visualize yourself zooming into one part of the memory. Like, try this out right now. Imagine something, some moment in your childhood or whatever. Just imagine, just remember some memory. And now, whatever angle you have a vision of that memory, I want you to literally, like a camera, zoom into something in that memory, and you will instantly see more of the memory open, and you will be surprised how you are the life in life. So guys, I'm gonna end it here. The plane has landed, but soon many pilots will lift off. We must pursue communication and its advancement. There is no greater honor. Advance the vision of your civilization, then work for whatever direction you go. The eyes are more important than the past. The potential of the eyes to see the new, to design the new, to realize I am alive now. So you know how many people are being pushed in their inner realms to non-existence? It's ridiculous. It's like don't we realize every breath is its own world? Sometimes if I tell you how in how I I've sometimes when I've went to bed, I've remained incredibly conscious of that moment before I fall to sleep, before I vanish into deep sleep, okay? Before I fade into deep sleep, okay? So I've paid attention. You know what happens? I identify after all ideology and thoughts of the day, after all those literally like programs stop, I am the breath. I am the breath. Consciousness is literally maintaining itself as the breath. And when the breathing changes, the inner realms literally change. Your breathing is literally the universe's telecommunications system with you. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings. And one last thing. Inner realm world extraction, it's like a butterfly. Don't chase it, but when it comes, trust the experiencer. Trust your eyes where that they are the only stage that if there was a truth, that truth can stand. Yeah. Rise, mankind. Rise.